Okay, so let's start off with the first question. The first question is asking you guys to show how you can arrive at this cost, $78.30. This question is a 1 mark question, so naturally, when you see 1 mark, right, you would expect like there's not much working to be done. So it's pretty straightforward. And take a look at what do they mean by $78 in the question. So $78 appears here. And they say it's inclusive of GST. So actually, if you realize, I realized that the main mistake for this question is students forget to include GST. But it's quite obvious because if you don't get $78.30, you know something is wrong. So, okay, hold on. I realized that it's not connected. I'm connecting. Yeah, if you guys can't see the screen, please let me know. Sorry, yeah, give us a moment for the ones that attend for me to connect the screen for those who are attending physically. Okay. Okay, we have connected. So this question again, they're asking arrive at a total cost of $78.30. And notice that they use the word charges, and charges is always inclusive of GST. So all you need to do is you need to take first 300 minutes, which has the base cost, and also add the additional subsequent minutes. Okay, so this should be the working. How do I derive this working is I take the base, the additional minutes. Okay, these are the additional minutes, multiply by the cost of the additional minutes, plus the base cost of the 300 minutes, and multiply throughout by the GST. Can you guys see that? Yeah, actually, if you guys manage to get $78.30, right, it should be more or less correct already because it's a proof question. So if you get it, you get it. Okay. So far, is this question all right? Just remember to add the GST appropriately. You have to multiply all the costs by the GST, not just the next 250 minutes, not just the first 300 minutes. You have to multiply it throughout. Okay, let's look at the second questions. So the second question says, Angela made at most 300 minutes of local calls using this plan. At most 300 minutes. So what does it mean? First, you need to understand the context of this, and you will realize that if it's before the first 300, if the call time doesn't exceed 300 minutes, right? Sorry? Okay, if the total amount of calls don't exceed 300 minutes, you don't have to pay extra for every minute. So there's always that fixed base cost. But you also need to have the idea of, even if it's 10 minutes, even if it's 20 minutes, even if it's 100 minutes, you have to pay that fixed cost, the full amount. So in a way, it's like, it's not worth it if you don't use that full 300 minutes. That's the idea you need to be able to get from this particular information sheet. Okay, but the question says, Angela made at most 300 minutes. They didn't tell you exactly how many minutes, but that's not important because we already know that she just has to pay that fixed base cost. Okay, and they ask you to calculate the total charge of her mobile phone bill. Keyword is charge. Okay, just now what were we looking at? We were looking at the first question. Remember, when they ask you for total charges, you have to include GST. Yes, exactly. So if your answer, some students have reached out to me and they told me that their answers is 25, but 25, does it include GST? No. So you actually have to take $25 times 1.08. You guys know why is it 1.08? Because it's, yes, exactly. So currently, right, okay, this question is very good enough. I mean, it's nice enough to tell you that the GST is 8%, but by default, it's now 8%. Lah. So if they didn't include it, you should also, I mean, if they didn't include the percentage, but they said there is GST, you should also automatically include that 8%. Okay? Hold on, sorry, I think someone is in the waiting room. Okay, but anyways, so yeah, but this is not the end of the question. This question is a 2 marks question. So please make sure you answer every single mark, okay? The second part is explain the significance of this answer. So when they ask you for significance of an answer, right, it's basically asking you for the meaning of the answer, okay? So the meaning of the answer, what could it be? You will notice that Angela, no matter what, she pays a fixed amount. Okay, because she calls at most 300 minutes. So in a way, the significance of this answer is, I mean, her answer will be the lowest possible cost of the mobile phone bill plan. Can you see that? It's going to be the lowest possible cost because even if you're not Angela, you're someone else and you don't exceed that 300 minutes, right? Yeah, you still have to pay $27 no matter what. Okay? Okay. I know some of you guys might want to take photo, feel free to do that, but please take note, do not write exactly the same thing, okay? Because at the end of the day, you will be penalized for plagiarism if you write the exact same thing, okay? Okay, is question 2 all right? Yeah, let's look at question 3 now then. So they say, Bernice made more than 300 minutes of local calls, this plan, okay? So now it's another girl, Bernice, and Bernice made more than 300 minutes. More than 300 minutes. So ask yourself, if the question is telling you more than 300, does she only pay the base plan now? No, she doesn't. You have to take into account that every 1 minute, you know, there is an additional cost. Okay. So sorry if there's doorbell sound. I can't stop it. It's the Zoom. When people are entering the room, there'll be this doorbell sound. Okay. So you have to take into account every other minute after the 300 minute. And they ask you to deduce a formula that gives the total charge of her mobile phone bill C for X minutes of local call minutes. Okay, so same thing. The keyword is charge, total charge. So total charge, it includes GST. So please factor the GST into your equation of the graph. Okay, and they ask you to deduce a formula. So in your head, right, how do you deduce this formula? You should ask yourself, okay, how do I write out a formula whereby only the 300, after the 300 minutes, then I multiply by 0.19. Okay, why 0.19? Because every 1 minute is charged at 19 cents. Okay, so how do I write this formula out? You need to tell yourself, okay, I don't know how many minutes Bernice actually made. I don't know, but all I know is it can be represented by X. Okay, represented by X, and after it's being represented by X, how much of this minutes, like after deducting the 300 minutes, is chargeable per minute? So that is your thought process. So you should be getting this expression, X minus 300. Do you all understand why? Do you all understand why is there X minus 300? Okay, yes. Okay, some of you are shaking your head. So why must you take X minus 300? Because what did the question say? Okay, what did the question say? The question say that X minutes represents the amount of local calls being made. Okay, so in total, there is X minutes of call made. But out of this X minutes, 300 you need to minus away. Why you need to minus away? Because those 300, you don't need to pay for that additional 19 cents. That's why you write X minus 300 to find the total amount of minutes that are chargeable. Can you see that? Sure you understand? And what did they also ask? They ask you how you arrive at your formula. For every step that you're writing, you should justify what you're writing. Okay, so for example, like the solution over here, before I even write this line, I need to justify my solution, why I write this line. And this is how I justify it. Can you guys see that? Okay, but please don't write the exact same thing. At the end of the day, you guys are the ones that are being marked, not me. So if your teachers start to see your answers are all the same, you're going to get into trouble. So please rephrase it, but at least get the idea right over here. Okay, but do you guys understand why is it x minus 300 now? Yeah, this is very important because if you don't get this formula right, I'm sure you guys have read through the whole paper. Your part 4, part 5, part 6, everything will be affected. Okay, so now let's look at the continuation of the question. They want to find the formula for the total charge of her mobile phone plan. So finding the amount of minutes that is chargeable is not enough. You need to find in terms of the amount charged, the amount charged at the end of the day. So does anyone have any idea on how to form this formula? Like just throw it out. Let's throw it out. Just try. Wrong, never mind. We're here to...
The base amount is 25.
Uh-huh.
And then after that, we need to times by 1.08 to find some charge.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Okay, for all those that are attending physically, do you all get the same idea? Yes, exactly. So besides looking at the chargeable minutes, you also need to factor in the base price. And after that, you need to include GST for everything. So this is the working. Okay. So we need to add in the charges for the first 300 minutes, not just the additional minutes, and multiply the total amount by 1.08 to account for the GST. As usual, please change the way that you should be writing the sentence. All of your answers should not look exactly the same. Okay. So after you get this idea, right, also look at the question again. What did they emphasize? They ask you to simplify the formula to simplest form. Okay, so getting the formula is not enough. You need to leave it in simplest form. And what does simplest form mean? Simplest form means, right, you should be expanding as much as possible and making sure your equation, your expression at the end of the day is as short as possible. Okay, do you all know the difference between factorization and expansion? Okay, it's very important. So simplest form basically means expanded form, okay, not factorized form. Okay, those online, if you guys are not sure of any questions, feel free to unmute yourself to ask me. Okay, so leaving your answer in simplest form means you should be expanding as much as possible. And at the end of the day, you need to combine every term that can be combined together as much as possible. Okay, so this should be your simplest form. Okay. Why is this your simplest form? Because I didn't just leave it in my working, I didn't just leave my working as my final answer. I combine everything, okay, as much as possible. How did I combine everything? I first do a rainbow method expansion for this part. And then after that, I combine this in. Can you guys see that? It's just your very basic rainbow method expansion. And after that, I just expand this out so that I can combine all the x terms together, which it so happens there's only one x term, and I can combine all the constants together. Okay, and this is my final answer. But please take note, you should be writing whereby x is bigger than 300. Okay, I can foresee that most of you would not write this. Okay, you should be writing this. Why? Because this formula is not correct if your x is lesser than 300 and equal to 300. Why is it not correct? Because when the number of minutes is 300 or less, okay, 300 or less, what happens? You're just paying a base price. Do you think you're following this formula? No, no matter what, you are paying $27. Okay, you need to get this idea in your head, because if you don't have this idea in your head, your part 4 will be wrong. So you tell yourself there's two scenarios happening. One scenario is whereby your x, your number of minutes is 300 or lesser. The next scenario is your x is 300 or more. And these two scenarios will give you two different looking graphs. Okay? Everyone okay so far online? If there's no questions, I will be moving on to the next part. Okay, feel free to stop me if you have any questions. Okay. Okay, so part 4, they ask you to sketch a graph that shows the relationship between the number of minutes, X, and the total charges of the mobile phone bill, which is represented by C. Okay, take note, total charges again. So that means you need to include GST to your cost because it's charged. Okay, and we can already see again in this particular page, right? Charges includes GST. Okay, inclusive of GST. Okay, because I had questions before, like how do I know if it includes GST or not? Then you just need to take a look at the information sheet at the front. They definitely will give you clues to indicate whether charges includes GST or not. Okay, so they ask you to sketch a graph. Basically, they want you to sketch a graph of what is happening, like how does the phone bill look like when the number of minutes changes. Okay, take note, usually when you sketch your graph, you have your y-axis, you have your x-axis, but in this case, you have to label your y-axis as C, exactly. If you label it as Y, you will be penalized. Why? Okay, I mean, why is that so? Not the alphabet Y. Okay, because they already clearly indicated in this question. They tell you that, they want a graph to show the relationship between X and C. And we all know that X is affecting C, right? It's not C affecting X, right? X is affecting C, right? So your x-axis should be represented by X number of minutes. Your y-axis, usually the value is affected by your x-axis values, right? Therefore, your y-axis should be labeled as a big C. Okay? So far, okay? Then how do you draw this? Remember just now the idea of two scenarios? So you need to draw these two scenarios into the same line. Okay, you cannot have more than one line, okay, because it's just one phone bill. Okay, that two scenario. The first scenario is at 300 and smaller, it will be stuck at 27. 300 and more, it will be bigger than 27. And how would the formula look like? It will look like your answer in part 3. Can see that? And then they also ask you to indicate critical values. Okay, what are critical values? Do you guys know? Okay, you guys have learned graph drawing in school. Have you learned quadratic graph drawing? Not all. Yes or no? Okay, you guys know what's a quadratic curve, right? I'm sure, because I have Nanyang Girls Sec 2 students, okay? So what is a quadratic curve is your U shape or your N shape. And usually when you draw quadratic curves, you plot it out on a graph paper or you even sketch it. You also have to include critical values, even if the question did not ask you to, okay? When you see, okay, this question is very kind. They tell you explicitly, you are expected to indicate your critical values on your sketch. But even if the question, don't say this, you have to include it. Okay, for your WA, for your schoolwork, everything, you have to include it. What are your critical values? Your critical values are your X and Y intercepts and your turning points if there is a turning point. There will always be a Y-intercept. There might not be an X-intercept, there might not be a turning point, but if they are present, you have to indicate them. Okay? These are your basically the key things, some of the key things you should be expecting to do for any graph sketching, any graph drawing. Okay, yes? Okay, for critical values, you always need to include your y-intercept, your x-intercept, and your turning points, if they exist. If they don't exist, then don't include lah. They don't exist, how to include, right? But if they exist, you are expected to indicate them in any of your graph sketching, graph drawing. It can be a straight line, it can be a curve, whatever. You just have to include x-intercept, y-intercept, and any turning points. So far, okay? And this is critical values, but for any graph drawing, you're also expected to do two other things. What are the two other things? You have to first indicate your axis, your Y, your X. In this case, is your C and your X. The last thing you have to do for every single graph drawing is you need to go and label your graph. So for a quadratic curve, okay, you will have your y equals to something x squared plus x plus a constant, right? You have to indicate all those things. So 3 things you always have to include in your sketching: labeling of axes, labeling of the graph you are actually drawing, and also your critical values, okay? These are 3 things you always have to do, not just for this question. Understand? Labeling of the graph. Okay, so so for example, right? Okay, this is not the question, just for example. Okay, her question is, what is the meaning of labeling of a graph? Okay, assuming I'm asking you to draw this, sketch this graph. Okay, sketch this graph, x plus 2. Okay, I want you to sketch it on your foolscap paper. So all you need to do is, first of all, draw the axis, right? Okay, and then we know that this one, the gradient is 1. Can see that? We know that the y-intercept is 2. Can see that? Okay, so this is one of your critical value. You sketch it. Okay, this is your other critical value. How do you find this? You sub y equals to 0. So x equals to -2. Right? Can see that? But what is the labeling of the graph? The labeling of the graph means you have to go and literally give the graph a name. Give it its own name, just write it there and you're done. We have satisfied the 3 things. Okay, what are the 3 things? Labeling of the axis, indication of critical values, and also labeling of the graph. Okay, you must always do that. This is not just for your WA. Everything, any one thing missing is instant minus half mark, minus half mark, minus half mark. Quite wasted, right? I mean, you know how to draw and you miss out all these small little details and you get penalized. It's not worth it. Okay? So far, okay? Okay, so now we come back to this question. So, okay, basically they want us to sketch the scenario. I hope you guys are able to internalize the 2 scenarios now. The lesser than 300 minutes, more than 300 minutes. Can anyone try, even those online? How would you guys think you should draw for the before 300 minutes, 300 minutes and smaller? What would you guys draw? Just try. What will you guys do for?
That cuts through the y-axis at 35.6 and cuts through the x-axis at
Okay. You are complicating yourself, okay? Don't think so much first. You ask yourself first, how do you think the graph shape should look like? Okay, but is it really one straight line upwards? No, right? It's not one straight line upwards. Why is it not one straight line upwards? Because there's 2 scenarios that you have to take into account of. One is before the 300 minutes. One is exceeding the 300 minutes. Do you realize that there are 2 things that you have to take into account for? Okay, why is there 2 scenarios you need to factor in? It's because the charges, the way the phone bill is being charged is very different. 3 minutes and before is a fixed cost. Can see that? 3 minutes and after, is it a fixed cost? It's no longer a fixed cost, right? Every 1 minute additional, you have to pay another additional 19 cents. Okay, so you need to ask yourself, with these 2 scenarios in mind, can you picture a graph shape in your head? Exactly, okay? The graph shape should look something like this, okay? No worries if you don't understand for now, we'll go through it anyway, but at least try to internalize this scenario in your head. This is how the graph shape should look like. Okay, sorry, my handwriting is a bit ugly. Okay, the graph shape should look like this, okay? Why should it look like this? Is because at the 300 minutes, before the 300 minutes, sorry, you're paying a fixed cost no matter what, okay? And after the 300 minutes, then it starts following that formula you found in part 3. That's why your graph should look like this shape. Okay, and immediately, can you see in a way, okay, even though it's not curved, okay, can you see that there is a sharp turning point? This sharp turning point is actually your critical value, one of your critical values, okay? Okay, so now let's take a look at the solution. Hold on, let me just erase this first. Okay, oops. Okay, ignore this first. So can you see this is how the graph should look like? Can you see this is how the graph should look like? Okay, ignore this first. Oh, sorry. What am I doing? Okay, ignore the thing in dark blue first. I want you guys to at least get the graph shape right. Can you guys see this is the graph shape? Yes? It will be a linear line. Why will it be a linear line? Because of, okay, it's not because, okay, linear line means straight line, yes. Okay, why will it be a linear line? Because look at your formula you found in part 3. This is my formula in part 3, right? Is this a linear formula? It is a linear formula, right? That's why it's a linear line. You should be expecting a linear line. Okay? Understand? There is no x-intercept. It doesn't exist. So if it doesn't exist, you don't indicate it. Okay, this one we leave it for after we go through all the solutions, okay? We go through all the solutions, then after when we finish, then we have a short consultation session, okay? Because we should be able to finish all the solutions so that you guys can check all your answers first, okay? So this is how the graph shape should look like, okay? 2 scenarios are being factored in. Can you see? I have my y-intercept, I have my critical turning point. What is my labeling of axis? What is missing now is my labeling of the graph. So you need to go and know how to label the graph. Label the gradient in the drawing itself? No. So long as you label the equation of the graph, you're actually labeling the gradient already. Because your formula of a graph is y equals to mx plus c, right? M, is it the gradient? M is the gradient, right? So if M is the gradient, right, it means that so long as you write your equation of the graph there, you have indicated your gradient. So this is the tricky part that I would say for this whole entire WA. The tricky part is knowing how to write the equation of this graph. And take note, every time you draw a graph, drawing must indicate equation, right? So you must write this, you have no choice. So how do you write it down? It will look something like this. Okay, it is no longer just C equals to 27 or C equals to mx plus C. I mean mx plus constant, right? You need to write down these 2 scenarios, this curly bracket and indicate when x is this value, C equals to this. When x is this particular value, C equals to this. Does it make sense? You guys look a bit confused. Okay, so please indicate your equation of the graph. Equation of the graph, done. Critical point, done. Okay, labeling of the axis, done. This is how you should be drawing the graph shape. Okay, take note. Also, a good question that you brought up about gradient. This graph, right, for the after 300 minutes, the gradient, is it positive or negative? Is it a positive gradient or is it a negative gradient? Negative gradient? Make up your mind. Positive or negative? Okay. According to the graph, is positive. According to the gradient, I mean the equation is also positive. Why is this a positive gradient? Because this is my answer from part 3, right? Gradient is always the coefficient in front of x, right? Okay, so can you see this value? Is it bigger than 0? Bigger than 0. So is the gradient positive or negative or not? Positive, okay? And actually, right, if you tell me negatives, that means you understand the whole question wrongly already. Okay, why? Because if it's negative gradient, you're saying for every 1 minute you call, your phone bill gets cheaper. A bit crazy, right? A bit too good to be true, right? Okay, so you need to take the context into account to help you check your work. Don't just blindly do, right, and like, oh, this is my answer. You should also ask yourself, is my answer logical? Okay, this is definitely logical. Why? Because for every minute that I'm spending, every 1 minute I'm calling more, I am paying more. That's how I check my work. Oh, it makes sense. Okay, so positive gradient, that's why my graph is sloping up. So this is part 4. Okay, why am I emphasizing on gradient? Because you need to know the idea of gradient to do part 5 correctly. Okay, So let's write part, okay, this is my part 5 answer. So I mean part 5, they already told you the equation. Okay, what do I mean by they already told you the equation? Part 5, they tell you now we change our phone bill structure. Okay, this new structure, and it's also a linear structure. This is the new equation of the phone bill representation. Okay, what does this equation mean? It means, okay, anyone want to try and tell me what does it mean first? Hmm? Yes. Okay, in a way, you're nearly there. Very good. Okay, good try. Okay, what does it mean? It means that there is a base price of $18. Okay, that means your phone bill, no matter what, will be $18. But unlike that 300-minute thingy going on, okay, this phone bill structure is basically just telling you for every 1 minute you are calling, right, you have to pay by per minute already. Don't care whether is it 300 minute less, 300 minute more. You are paying by the minute since the beginning. Okay, that is the difference. So you ask yourself, for this particular graph shape, do you think there will be that straight line and then a tilt up, or is it just a tilt up? Yeah, it's just a tilt up immediately. Okay, yes? Because there's no like increase in there's no straight line and then going up, because look at X. What does X represent? X represents the number of minutes of local calls, right? So from this formula, so long as X increases by 1, by 2, by 3, you will start seeing the graph going up. You will never see that horizontal line situation. The previous question, there is a horizontal line situation, is because there's that before 300 minutes and after 300 minutes scenario going on. Here there isn't. Here you're paying by the minute from the beginning. The previous scenario, the 2022 scenario, okay, this one is the 2023 scenario, okay? The last year scenario, you are paying a fixed amount for the first 300 minutes. That's why there's that plateau. There's that horizontal line. Can you see that? Okay, you must get the idea right. Okay. Okay, and then for part 5, they ask you to sketch it together with the part 4 sketch. So you please draw it on the same sketch, but indicate very clearly which one is part 5, which one is part 4. If you don't indicate clearly, same thing. The examiner can say is you never indicate clearly. It's your fault that it's not clear. I don't know how to mark. Okay. And then the next thing is, how am I gonna draw this into my graph? The gradient idea is very important. Okay, and the idea of mx plus c is also very important. Do you guys know what is the meaning of mx plus c? If you guys don't know, you must let me know now. Okay, what is c? Do you guys know what is c? Constant. Okay, but what does the constant represent? Does everyone agree? Okay, okay, what is being mentioned in the class physically is c is the y-intercept. Okay, so you should know the starting of this particular graph will be at 18. It should not go below 18. Can see that? Okay, and what does M represent? Okay, M represent gradient. Good. Everyone agree M represent gradient? Okay, if you don't know if M represent gradient, let me know after we go through everything. Okay, M represent gradient. Do you guys think this graph is steeper or less steep than our part 4 graph? Steeper? Okay, everyone agree steeper? Okay, yes, it's actually less steep. Okay, because 0.08 is less positive than 0.252. Okay, this idea of steepness is very important. Okay, why is it very important? Let me just erase this. Okay, if I didn't get my steepness right, okay, I say that it's more steep. Okay, can you see my graph will look like this? And I only have one intersection. If I say it's more steep, this is more steep, right? Like, okay, what does more steep mean? More steep means is basically less gentle. It's going up at a very fast pace, going down at a very fast pace. Okay, if it's more steep, my graph looks like this. But if it's less steep, okay, this is parallel. If it's less steep, it will look something like this. Can you see the number of intersection has changed? This one had 1 intersection, this one have 2 intersection. So if you draw your graph wrongly, you go and draw a more steep one. Your part 6, part 7 gone. Okay, so you have to draw according to the equation of the graph. And how do you do that? Is you realize that, oh, it's going to be a less steep graph. Therefore, my part 5 graph will look something like this. Understand? Okay, the steepness of the graph is important. Another way, besides looking at the steepness of the graph to draw this question, another way to do it, okay, is to just have 2 points and plot them and then connect the 2 points. Why can you do that? Because this is a linear graph. Linear graph is a straight line. To plot a straight line graph, do you guys know you always just need 2 coordinates? Yeah, because it's a straight line. You have 2 coordinates, you can draw one straight line. Okay, so to plot this particular thing, right, you can just do something like this. I let x equals to maybe 0 and I let x equals to 300. Since I already know 300 is one of the critical points. So then I just find the y value accordingly. I just plot and then I draw my line. That is another way to do it. Can you all see? Okay, besides taking all this into account to draw your part 5, right? Also take note, your scale of the graph should be even. What do I mean by scale of the graph? Do you guys know what's the meaning of scale of the graph? Okay, good, that some of you know. Okay, your scale of your graph, if you are doing it on a piece of graph paper, is like for every 1 unit on your x-axis is 2 cm, that sort of scenario. That is the meaning of scale of your graph. What do I mean by your scale of your graph should be even? It means it should be reasonably and evenly spaced. Look at my 2 critical values for part 4 and part 5. One of them is 27, one of them is 18. You don't, okay, 27 I write here, right? If I put 27 here, don't go and tell me 18 is here. Doesn't make sense, right? Because 0 is here, okay? 0 is here, 27 is here. 18 is definitely more than the halfway mark of 0 to 27. If you go and put the 18 so low at below, right, it's no longer an even scale. Okay, 18 over 27 is actually 2 over 3. I hope you guys realize that, okay? If it's 2 over 3, it means that actually from 0 to 27, I should probably divide my space equally into 3 spaces, and 2 spaces up will be my 18 mark. That is what you mean by evenly spaced. It doesn't need to be super accurate because why? This question is asking you to sketch, not asking you to draw. Draw means do on graph paper. If this question was a graph paper question, right, they will use the word draw. And if they ask you to draw and you draw it on foolscap, also wrong, okay? So please make sure it is evenly spaced. Only when it's evenly spaced and when you take into account the gradient accordingly, you will get this accurate looking graph that will help you in your part 6, part 7. Okay, so far understand? If don't understand, let me know. Best time is to ask now. You need to submit this in next week, right? 27 April, right? Okay, so far okay? Okay, so now let's look at question 6. Okay, wait, let's just double check. Have we answered everything from question 5? Calculate the total charges. Okay, sorry. Sketch the graph of C against X on the same axis in front. Done. Just need to sketch, don't need to solve for anything. Okay, now let's look at part 6. Part 6, they ask you, by using algebra, calculate the coordinates of the point of intersection of the 2 graphs you have sketched in 4 and 5, leaving your answers to nearest whole number. It's a 4-mark question. 4-mark question, you need to be careful, 4 marks, okay? There's a lot more things that maybe you think you need to do and take into account of. So they ask you to use algebra. Do you guys know what does that mean? Okay, what does that mean? Try. Sorry, one by one. You first? Simultaneous equation, you? Yeah, basically, yes, you have to use simultaneous equation, yes. Okay, so, okay, I'm sure you guys have done simultaneous equation in school. And why do you guys need to do simultaneous equation? Because simultaneous equation is actually helping you find the intersection of 2 different graphs without using graphical method, right? So if you see using algebra means you shouldn't be using graphical method. And anyway, this question you cannot use graphical method because you didn't plot it on a graph paper. it will never be accurate enough to give you an accurate answer, your drawing lah. Okay, so algebra means your simultaneous equation, and calculate the coordinates of the point of intersection of the two graphs means you need to simultaneously sub in the first graph into the second graph. Can you see that? Okay, but remember, okay, your first graph, your part 4 graph, is it a very simple straight line, or there is two scenarios you need to take into account of? Two scenarios, right? So actually this question, there is a trick to it. You cannot just simultaneously equate this equation to this equation. No, look at your graph, look at the drawing. The question already very kind. They tell you, look at part 4, look at part 5, right? You realize that you have two intersections. And the first intersection is actually not with this equation. It's actually with this equation. Can see that? Your second intersection then is with this equation and this equation. Okay, let me color code it to make it clearer. Your first intersection, your second intersection. Can see that? So to find the points of intersection, you actually need to do two different simultaneous equations. Understand? Do you guys know how to do simultaneous equation? Okay. Okay, it's just basically I sub this equation to this equation, or I do elimination. But definitely this question, elimination is harder. Right? Substitution is way easier because you can just sub C away. Like, yeah. Okay, C is the subject. But look at the question. The question didn't just ask you to find the coordinates of point of intersection. They also ask you to leave your answer to nearest whole number. Okay, let me just underline some of the key things you need to do. Coordinates, points of intersection, leaving answers to whole number. Okay, when they ask you for coordinates, what are they asking for? Yeah, the X and Y, exactly. Good, don't just find the X, you must also find the Y, because coordinates always come in a pair. You have your X coordinate, you have your Y coordinate. So a lot of students, what they like to do is they find the X already done, they move on. They didn't give me the complete coordinate, they just give me the X coordinate. Okay, and the next thing is they put brackets, points of intersection. So in a way, they are telling you there could be one intersection, there can be more intersection, up to you lah. See whether you can find out correctly or not. Okay, but in this case, we have found out that there's definitely two. And if you got your gradient wrong, if you drew your graph wrongly in part 5, you will only get one intersection. Okay? So they also ask you to leave your answer to nearest whole number. So that means your coordinates, I shouldn't be seeing your final answer. I shouldn't be seeing any decimals. If I see any decimals, same thing, minus half mark. Even if the answer is accurate, but you're not answering the question to what the question is asking you for, you will be penalized. Okay? So far, can? Okay. This one, same thing. Okay, take a look at the answer, but I want you guys to try first. Okay, don't understand, copy. Make sure you all understand now, else no point learning all this. Okay, so first intersection, can you see this is my simultaneous equation? I am equating this is my part 5. This is my part 4. Can see that? But my part 4, this is the graph looks like that, right? It is this portion. Can see that? Then after that, I solve for X. I need to find it to the nearest whole number. Can see? Okay, managed to get this answer, anyone? No one. Do you all get this answer? Okay, great. Okay, if you got this answer, good job. Okay, but take note, okay, there's something here that you have to take note. Even though the question asks you for nearest whole number, leaving your answer in nearest whole number, for every intermediate working, what do I mean by intermediate working? It means so long as it's not your final answer, do not leave it in whole number if there's a higher accuracy. Why? Because, for example, okay, your part A, you round off your answer to nearest whole number, but your part B requires your part A answer. And if you use the round off answer, your part B, the accuracy will be off. So for all intermediate workings, you have to make it as accurate as possible so it doesn't affect the accuracy for the later part. Okay, do you guys understand what I'm saying? Okay, this first intersection is not that obvious. Okay, but the second intersection, it will be obvious on what I'm trying to tell you. So first intersection, we found the value of X. You see, you don't see I just write this immediately. I wrote the exact value first. then I correct it to a nearest whole number. Always leave your intermediate working at a higher accuracy because you never know if you need it later. Okay, so I found my x, my y is very straightforward. It has to be 27, right? Because this is the line, it's a straight line, my y equals to 27. Okay, so my first coordinate is 113, 27 corrected to nearest whole number. If it's not corrected to nearest whole number, it will be 112.5, 25. Sorry, 27. Can see that? Okay, this is my first intersection. My second intersection, I have to do the simultaneous equation to the other side. Can see that? So this is same thing. Oops, why do I keep erasing my own answers? Okay. Can see that? Okay. Take note, second intersection. Look at my x here. My x here, can you see it is, okay, okay, I want you guys to try keying this into the calculator. You're key in now. Okay, key in this into your calculator now. Oh, this is a 6, not a 0. My handwriting is ugly, sorry. Okay, key in it to the calculator now. Do you get a very long answer?
419.3290.
419.32? 32, really? Did I write something wrongly here?
Oh, that's a 6.
Yeah, that's why it's a 66.
419.80.
Yeah, there's more than that, right? Yeah, it's a never ending number. So basically, I'm just trying to tell you guys that it's a never ending number lah. Okay, it's a never ending number, but it's impossible. I mean, not impossible, but you guys want to write every single thing down, right? But at least you know that the nearest whole number is 420 lah. You can see from the start. But your intermediate working, you must leave it at a higher accuracy level. Okay, why must you leave it at a higher accuracy level? Because this case, when you need to find your y coordinate, right? You need to sub your x in. If you sub this in versus you sub this in, your c will be affected accordingly. And it will not be accurate. Your c will not be accurate when you use this value. Okay, it will affect the accuracy. So for every time when you're doing your intermediate steps, right, always leave it at a higher accuracy level. By default, you leave it at 5SF. 5SF usually is accurate enough, but if you want to leave it in 6SF, 7XF, 8SF, even better. The more significant figure, the more accurate. Can? Okay, always use your intermediate working because if this one, you just substitute this in, I'm quite sure you will not get 52 already. Okay, and if you don't get 52, your answer is wrong. So these are the solutions. And do you guys know that you can always check your answer for simultaneous equation? Okay, sorry, yes. Okay, you guys can always check your answer using simultaneous equation. You can always sub in your answer to the other equation. Do you guys know what I'm trying to say? Yeah, because simultaneous equation, right? You're always taking, you find maybe x first, then you sub into one equation to find y. But there's always two equations in a simultaneous equation. So it means after you sub into the first one, you get your y answer, you sub your answers x and y into the second equation that you didn't use to see whether your left-hand side equals to the right-hand side. Okay, do you guys know that you can actually use your calculator to solve simultaneous equations? Okay, you guys know, did your school teach? Yeah, but it only works when it's a linear simultaneous equation. So if you start seeing quadratic terms in your simultaneous equation, your calculator will not be able to help you. Okay, do you have a question? How I found C? Okay, C is because the formula of the graph is this, right? C equals to this, right? So I just sub in the x value I found into this equation, and then I can get my C. Can you see that? Yeah, both of them works. Because remember, it's a simultaneous equation, right? It means it should fit in both equations. If it fits into this and it doesn't fit into this, means my answer is wrong. So how I check my work is, I sub into this one, right? Then if I want to check, I sub into this. and they should give me the same answer.
So any point on the line,
No, not any point on the line, only the point of intersection.
any point on the line is basically the formula.
Yes, any point on the line follows the equation of the line. Okay, that's how you even get to draw out the line. Okay, you imagine yourself plotting infinitely many little plots based on the equation of the line. Okay, that's how you draw out a straight line. Okay, so same thing, use the graph to check if it makes sense. These are my answers. Then you ask yourself, in my graph, okay, I have a one of my coordinate is this. Does it make sense? It does, because it fits this. This is definitely lesser than 150, right? Does it make sense? Yes. And then is it at 27? Yes. So it makes sense. My answer makes sense according to the graph. Then the other answer is 140, comma, what was it? 52. Okay. Can see that? Then you use your graph and check. Does it make sense? Yes, because it's above 300, right? The scale looks pretty even as well. It looks like it's at the 400 and above mark. And then this, it is 52. Does it make sense? It does, because it's above 27. And the scale looks pretty even as well. Okay, so this is how you check your work. So far, okay? Make sense? Okay, this honestly, this WA is pretty easy. Okay, a lot of people will get the answer correct. I mean, will know how to do the question. Is how many people will be able to do it as accurately as possible. And this is why I keep emphasizing how to check your work, because it's not just for your WA. A lot of papers everyone can do. It's just how accurate your answers can be compared to everyone else. So you really need to know all these checking techniques. Okay, okay, let's look at part 7. So part 6, everyone good? Okay, anyone managed to actually get everything correct so far? Online people can give me any thumbs up or reactions if you guys got it correct. Got it correct? Okay, good. Okay, at least one of you. That's good. Okay. Good that you got it correct. Okay, no one giving me any reactions. Okay, let's move on to part 7. They tell you this other girl called Candice now makes more than 300 minutes local call. And they ask you to explain how her mobile phone bill will change under the new plan. And they ask you to use part 4, part 5, part 6 to help you in an explanation. So it means that you have to use part 4, part 5, part 6. They ask you how the plan will change. And they basically also ask you to use the graph. Okay, so this question is a 2-mark question. So definitely you should write enough to give you that, to help you get that 2 marks. Okay, this is the exact same graph. Nothing has changed. It's just that I want to clean it up to do a part 7 here. Okay, take note. My graph, even though I got this tail thing here, by right, excuse me, you don't have to draw so long. Why you don't need to draw so long? Because cost will never be negative. If it's negative, the company is paying you to use the phone. A bit crazy. Okay? Yeah, exactly. Too good to be true already. Okay, and the x will never be negative because you are calling someone. I don't know how do you calculate negative minutes lah. Okay, so actually these 2 tails don't need to be so long, and make sure your drawing, your graph is big enough. Okay, here I don't need to draw so big because it's iPad, I can zoom in, but your paper that you submit to school, you need to make sure that it's big enough. Okay, if your drawing is too small, you can be penalized as well. So 2 marks, coming back to this question, 2 marks, you need 2 points. They ask you to describe the difference in mobile phone bill, how will it change? So you just need, when you look at this graph, okay, do you guys realize anything about the difference in mobile phone price charges? Anything difference? Anything like that stands out to you between these 2 lines, your part 4 line, your part 5 line? Anything that stands out?
If the number of minutes call is less than 420,
You're nearly there. You have the right idea. That's good.
it will be more, but then if it's more than 430, that's like cheaper.
Yes, okay, yeah. Both of you guys have a combined right idea. Okay, what are they saying? They're saying you should look at basically which line is cheaper during which time period. Okay, at 400, okay, this is why you need to okay, how do you even realize all this? Is because the question emphasized to you, you need to use your part 4, part 5, part 6. And what were you doing in part 6? You were finding the intersections, right? So in a way, they are also telling you to zoom into the intersection and then tell me something about the graph shape of 4 and 5. That's what the question is actually leading you to do. Can see that? So part 6, you found the intersection. You have this point. Oops, I keep erasing my stuff. Okay, you have this point. Okay, so at this point, right, anything after 420 minutes, can you see actually the new plan is cheaper?
Yeah.
Anything before 420 minutes, the old plan is cheaper? Why am I only looking at 420? Why am I not looking at this other coordinate? Because what did the question say in part 7? Yes, exactly. The question already tell you they don't really care lah. They just want the more than 300 minutes. So essentially, right, you just focus, you throw away this out the graph lah in your head. You focus on the above 300 minutes. Okay?
So if you use from 300 to 420, the old plan is better.
Yes.
More than 420, the new plan is better.
Yes, exactly. Okay, what you say is exactly right. If you use 300 to 420 minutes, old plan is better, cheaper. Okay, don't need to say better. Who knows? Maybe she crazy one. She want to pay more. Okay, so just say that it's cheaper. Okay, then after 420 minutes, the other plan, the new plan is better. And realize this question is how many marks? 2 marks, right? The fact that you can tell me 2 different scenarios means you hit 2 marks already, lor. Then you get the full 2 marks. Can see that? So knowing how many marks the question is very important. Okay, same thing. Get the idea right. Don't copy word for word. Later you'll get into trouble. Okay, get the idea right. I'm sure once you get the idea right, you can write this all on your own. Okay. Yeah. So actually that's all. Yeah. We have about 30 more minutes, slightly lesser than 30 more minutes. So if you guys need any help, like for me to take a look at your assignments, this is the time to ask. Okay, or any people online have any questions, let me know. Okay, unfortunately, I won't be able to like send you guys the solutions because to avoid plagiarism stuff. But if there's anything you guys would like to see or ask, do it now.很难吗？
就是你自己读的时候感觉。
The tricky part of this entire question is actually just your part 4. You need to, yeah, you won't get error carry forward lah, because part 4 is gone, everything is gone, right? Okay, because part 4 is something different. It is not like what you see in school usually. You don't see just a straight linear line. You need to take into account the scenario, the different scenario. This is an application question basically. Okay. Okay, you do not extend this line now. Okay, sorry, because I was unmuted online, so I need to unmute myself and explain again. You do not extend this line down, no. Why don't you extend this line? Because this line does not exist when your x is smaller than 300. It only exists when your x is bigger than 300. When your x is smaller than 300, you're paying a flat rate of $27 inclusive of GST. So if you draw this line, right, first of all, it doesn't exist and it doesn't make sense because you will never pay something that is negative. The company will not pay you to use the phone. Okay? Okay? Yeah, if you guys want me to see your paper, you can show me as well.
The question to the significance again. I don't quite get the
Sure. Okay, explaining the significance again for question 2. So actually this question, to be very honest, is a bit ambiguous because significance like they're not being very exact on asking what they want. But what I interpret it as basically what is the meaning of her answer? What is the meaning of her charge? Sorry. Okay. The fact that her charges is actually 27, it shows that we realize that is the minimum amount that she's gonna pay, and actually the minimum amount that anyone else is also going to pay using the old phone bill structure. Can you see that? So because it is the minimum amount, it is the cheapest possible phone bill charge law. So that to me is the significance. Yeah, it's honestly not a very like math question. It's a more of an interpretation question. Okay. So this kind of question, if it comes out in exam, a bit too bad lah. Like you never know what answer they are actually looking for. But you should, because it's also how many marks? 2 marks, right? Yeah, you found the value is 1 mark already. So basically the significance is also just 1 mark. So you don't need to crack your head, write too much. Yeah, you write at least enough to help you get that 1 mark. It's like some exam techniques lah. Okay, anyone have questions? Too shy to ask, can just type in the chat also. Okay. Yeah. So if any of you guys feel that you are struggling with this chapter, it's probably because the concept of linear graph, you guys need to go and brush up a bit. Okay, this chapter, right? I mean, this WA is basically just simultaneous equation, linear graphs. The only thing that is additional is your question 4, the application side. So if you're struggling to understand what is y equals to mx plus c, how do I even plot out a straight line? Go and recap on your straight line chapter, your graph drawing chapter, your simultaneous equation chapter. Okay. If you guys have no questions, feel free to leave also lah. Okay. Because I think after this, you guys don't have any more Sec 2 class, right? Yeah. Okay, hopefully you guys managed to learn something from here today. Okay, have you all taken the flyers, the goodie bags and all? Yeah, okay. Yeah, for those that are joining online, so sorry, you guys won't get the goodie bag lah. Any questions? Oh, entire thing. Okay. Okay, thank you, Pei Han. Yeah, but thank you. Okay, but please remember what is taught, not just the answer. Please understand what is going on. Yeah, feel free to leave if you have no questions. If you want to ask anything, you can stay on. I'll be here until 3 o'clock.